Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having invited me, but even more so for having taken the initiative to organize this event. There's a lot going on these days, and I think by roughly 80 to 90% of invitations I declined, I just told Estela, but on this one I didn't hesitate for long, because it's just too important and too well composed and conceived as event, as agenda. So it really is a privilege for me to speak to you today on the subject that is rapidly defining the boundaries of medicine. It's personalized medicine and advanced therapy medicinal products, ATMPs, in jargon, the abbreviation as we call it in short. And I think we really are, or at least maybe standing at a unique moment in history. And I know that is big words, but it may well be true, huh? Because remember when in the 20th century, antibiotics really transformed medicine. The combination of personalized medicine and ATMP, so cell, gene, and tissue engineered therapies, has really, I think, the potential to transform medicine now in the 21st century. The decisions made now, also those, and there I have to look in the mirror, from the regulatory perspective, where we at the Commission, at least we contribute to the legislative process, I think they will determine whether going forward we in Europe, we will lead or whether we will follow. Or I already would be very happy if we co-lead, and amongst others, but at least we are at the forefront. So personalized medicines, they do represent a profound shift from the one-size-fits-all approach that to one that is really tailoring the interventions to the genetic, to the biological and lifestyle characteristics of each patient. And we have already seen how genomic sequencing can guide oncology treatments, enabling us to match patients to targeted therapies with far greater precision. So those, I think that is already a key, to again use Brussels jargon, so that we're there already, we have seen this, but this, I think, only the first taste of the potential of what can come. We're seeing AI-enabled tools that analyze real-world data to predict treatment responses and disease progression. And the promise is not only better outcomes, but also more efficient use of our healthcare resources. That may be very down to earth to think about efficient use of resources, but it is part of the reality. And I don't want to turn our joint eyes to geopolitics, but if I was concerned, say, a year ago about the sustainability and I just look at demographics of our healthcare systems from a purely financial budgetary perspective, the challenges now, 1 year on today, I think have become so much bigger. So that is also something. Of course, better diagnostics, better therapies, but there's also an element of efficiency. Sorry, I do not share your dislike for competition. I think maybe in quite a number of areas, if we do have competing for the best solution, it's not necessarily, it doesn't always have to be about cutting corners and cutting people's rights. So I think there, to keep an eye on having a bit of competition on the market, but also have efficiency in the system. So all that to say that we are really conscious of the task, because we have put forward, by now more than 2 years ago, a package of revised pharmaceutical rules, and really they were decades old, more than 2 decades, and they should really, we do need to be competitive in Europe as a sector, but also really for the outcomes. We do need a regulatory framework that enables, that is really open to innovation, and that is fit for the digital age, that is fit for the biotech age, but that's also really fit for the age of personalized medicines. And and so we're conscious, I think, of the importance to really get it right in those rules. And I do now look at the honourable member of Parliament. We really are Also no, but I think we, with the health committee, we know, honestly, really, I found it really striking. I've been around in Brussels for many years and I've seen lots of political debates, but I think the sense of responsibility in the health committee across the different political colors I did find remarkable, and I really count on all those involved in the legislative process, and that's Council, Parliament, also us as Commission, and I'm really confident. But we are conscious that we should really get it right. There are things one can really get also wrong. So there, in the package, I mean, there are many important things in this package, and if you don't modernize, update your rules in 25 years, there's a lot to do. But I think the things that really matter for us, there are a number of measures really trying to ensure that our regulatory system can keep pace with the scientific and the technological project. And the aim is really to have to create an enabling regulatory environment for the promising new therapies and for breakthrough in innovation. So the reform package, and it's still on the table, includes regulatory incentives to support the development of innovative medicines. I mean, incentives will be one of the really challenging parts of the trilogue discussions, because there are lots of different I think views and interests on that, but we must make sure that we do keep the incentives really one size fit all. Also when it comes to incentives, I think society, if we do grant incentives, we have an interest as society to really use them smartly to stimulate the things we need most, and the really innovative, the breakthrough, the unmet medical needs. And let me just pause this topic here, because it will be one of the challenging discussions in trilogues, and I really hope that we come up with something that is that meets the challenge, that we make good use of the regulatory tools in the interests of all of us, of our societies. Currently, what is on the table, for example, for orphan medicines, the package offers the longest protection period for orphan medicines worldwide, 10 years of market exclusivity. So I know that there are some voices saying we must match the American 13 years for bio. If you look at the regulatory incentive package, what is on the table is already at least internationally competitive. See, I do like competition.
Something is good.
Yeah. And I think, we have all interest in really being smart in designing an incentive package that really stimulates the things that we need, and those investments that we really need and want as societies. The reform package will also strengthen the early scientific and other regulatory support, very important, from the European Medicines Agency, especially for SMEs, which has proven to result really in better quality of the files and hence more efficient scientific assessments. And the idea is really more of that, better possibilities for regulatory advice. Another element I think relevant in our context here is that the reform will simplify the rules for GMO medicines and facilitate real-world data usage for medicine authorization. Moreover, the reform aims to ensure that our regulatory system can accommodate groundbreaking and novel types of therapies. That includes, for example, the possibility of regulatory sandboxes to test out novel approaches before they really become more widely available, and before also the regulators have the experience on how to deal with them. That is really, by the way, also something we're looking at closely in the context of our work on the Biotech Act. But already for pharmaceuticals, for medicines, the package on the table for the first time ever contains quite an ambitious proposal on controlled sandboxes. It's not that anything goes, it's a controlled space, but really in interests of all sides to really, if there's something new, rather than waiting 3 years until everything and then move on, but really as quickly as possible try to work together and find what is the right regulatory framing of this novel thing to really be sure to have efficacy and safety assured. There are also concepts like, I think also very important, platform technologies and the broader use of the master file concept or decentralized manufacturing. All those are concepts alien to the old legislation, but I think critical to have and to have with an open mind in a regulatory framework that is fit for the future. I think these could really pave the way for personalized treatments, for example, ultra-rare diseases. At least we're hopeful, and at least we want to create the condition. I know it takes so much more than just having the right rules in place, but at least you should have rules that are facilitating and certainly not hindering. All the different measures that I mentioned, they aim at promoting innovation, and I think they already do contain a big step in enhancing the EU competitiveness in the pharma sector, and also for the attractiveness here of our part of the world. And they're complemented by a number of different types of simplification measures that should significantly reduce the administrative burden for those that apply for marketing authorization. Maybe just a few examples. The reform should significantly reduce the scientific assessment timelines for marketing authorization. We tried it during the pandemic with the vaccines, and we know that more can be done. It will be facilitated, so part of the simplifications will be by a hugely simplified structure of the committee, or simplified committee structure at the EMA, reducing the number of the committees from 5. So if you really were, I think if you're pediatric, orphan, I mean, if you tick several boxes, you had to go through 5 different committees currently. I mean, you still have today to go to 5 different committees. So there's certainly something that can be streamlined. The reform should also eliminate the need to renew marketing authorizations every 5 years. To have a good system of pharmacovigilance, and where in a system of belts and braces, where we can do something away. That was also part of the reform, really trying to have a as lean as possible, yet safe and safe system. We also modernized the regulatory system with enhanced digitization and the better use of health data for regulatory decision making. And we also look at a touch point of this legislation with other legislation. So, for example, interaction with HTA, medical devices, SOHO, clinical trials. I think especially here in our ATMP context, the interaction with SOHO is one of my favorite cases that I get on my desk, and there are also nightmare cases, really classification. So what falls into which, and sometimes it's just for a simple mind like mine, it is just impossible to tell. And then I hear the super expert from this saying, with the most convincing opinion that it must be false, it's clearly still a SOHO, and then the other scientific opinion with the same utter conviction and degree of convincing it. So, but it means that, especially in our area here, a personalized ATMP, advanced therapy, cell and gene. Of course, now we start with something which is clearly a SOHO, and at some stage we may be crossing the borders, and then which rules apply. And again, there the interaction should be smooth and certainly not contradictory. I hear often that when it comes to, for example, this, my also concerned, I think your field, IVD, so IV diagnostics and the interaction then with medicines, and then what does the clinical trials regulation ask me to do when I use a device, certain device in combination with a medicine, as opposed to what the IVDR is asking me to do. So all those things need to be ideally really smoothly interacting, and what can be done in the pharma package we really try to iron out and really enhance or improve the touch points as much as possible. Maybe moving specifically to ATMPs, I think they are probably the most tangible expression of personalized medicine. And sorry, Esteve, you're sitting in front of me, but we had long and interesting, and a lot of what I learned I owe from the insights I got from you. So your therapies, so yes, very, very, very personalized. They can be, at least. And so ATMPs are not just new medicines. I think they are really often regenerative solutions and gene therapies that can modify the very blueprint of a disease. And that is another dimension than just curing my headache. So, and in this year alone, in 25, so far, we based on the suggestion of the European Medicine Agency. The Commission approved so far 2 ATMPs. The first one, BioVec, is made to heal wounds in people with a rare skin condition called dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. I hope that I pronounced that more or less correctly. And there was no real cure to that, I think, in the past. And the second one, the second approved ATMP of this year, Zemcal Pro, is a stem cell therapy created for adults with certain blood cancers who need a specific type of stem cell transplant but can't find a matching donor. So this really provides those adults with a unique and novel crucial treatment option. The third ATMP, Ocatsil, if I pronounce it correctly, it's set to be approved soon. Of course, I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but so far the authorization file process is looking good. And that's a CAR-T therapy for adults, 26-year-old and older, with a certain type, again, of blood cancer called BO. So that new treatment will join 6 other CAR-T cell therapies already authorized in the EU, reflecting advances in personal medicine and offering more hope to patients with limited treatment options. And these are only examples from ATMP, so authorized medicines. Next to that, we do have in the legislation the hospital exemption, so you do have very important cell and gene therapies developed under the hospital exemption regime. They do not need to go to Amsterdam and then to Brussels for marketing authorization. They can, and sometimes they do. So I focus on the approved ones because those are the files that went over my desk. I know a little bit better, but just wanted to mention there are both avenues out there, and I think both are very important. Yeah, these therapies are really fundamentally different from traditional medicines, and their development, the manufacturing, the delivery, the monitoring, and they raise numerous challenges. I can only imagine from a medical perspective, but in a way that also translates into challenges from the regulatory science perspective. The therapies come at a really high initial cost: research, development, manufacturing, safety monitoring, and they do pose financial challenges for the healthcare systems, especially, and that is, I guess, inherent in the nature of personal medicines. We're not talking blockbuster 5 million patients across Europe, but really small. And these, and forgive me to be talking in terms of a market. So the possible turnover and the revenues, which would have to compensate then the cost, the high cost involved in this medicine. So also from that purely financial perspective, or incentives to develop clear challenges, that's, yes, the potential is absolutely there, but that is something we also, from a regular perspective, have to keep in mind. And I think that's also why I did mention the 2 avenues: the classic authorization, marketing authorization, which is the norm, and the hospital exemption is the exception, but the exception exists. And there are also some very successful examples under that avenue. And I think in Europe we probably do face specific obstacles when it comes to ATMP innovation, including the difficulty in translating research. I think we still have a really, if you compare with other regions in the world, if you look at our science, our research, we're still really all the way up there at the top. Our clinical infrastructure, I mean, we have a lot in clinical trials. We've been losing ground. That's another debate. But I think we have a lot when it comes to the base work. But the translation into successful products, into successful startups, I think there are other parts of the world. If you just look at the number of manufacturers, we're in a different situation. That's one of the reasons why we're looking as one of the priority projects currently underway at the European Biotech Act to see what can be done there. I think we also have practical challenges like access to the essential materials. maybe skills, experience or expertise in scalable processing and so on. So I think there are a multitude of challenges, but I also very much would like to hear from you, from everyone, the experience on the ground. Maybe let me conclude with a perspective on the regions. I think has been, I couldn't agree more, which was said initially. I think the importance of regions also as drivers of research, of scientific progress, of innovation, but also not just in any ivory tower, but actually on the ground in the clinical setting and also the commercial setting. So EU and national laws and strategies may provide some overall, whatever, the life sciences strategy, or I'm sure that there's a Spanish strategy for life sciences or for biotech or for something. But if you look, very often it is at the regional level where we see the really vibrant innovation ecosystems and where innovation takes root. We've been looking around a bit in the context of the Biotech Act, because obviously if you look what's happening elsewhere in the world, there are clusters which tend to somehow have found the recipe to do things really well, to be really a hub of innovation, not least also when it comes to ATMP. And looking around in Europe, we don't have any Massachusetts or whatever, Boston region here or Bay Area. Yes and no. I think we do have really vibrant, and at some stage, we should be installing the European cluster for whatever, CAR-T, the European this or that. Looking around, we have many really powerful regions, sometimes cross-border. Think of the Copenhagen, Lund, across the belt there area, but not only there. So I think there is a lot in the region, and I can't tell you if there's anything ultimately we conclude, because the Biotech Act, to do something to boost biotech in Europe, we would like to have some added value. So one thing one could be connecting different clusters, but on the other hand, one could also let the competition of different regions just continue to flourish. So I just mentioned the Biotech Act because in that context I've been really looking around and I've been amazed at how many and really sometimes specialized, sometimes more general, we've just in the area of health and biotech, how great and successful regions we are. Those regions do bring together hospitals, universities, SMEs, but also large industries, sometimes local governments in clusters, and they are really have sometimes an excellent track record in developing, testing, deploying new healthcare solutions. For example, look at the regional innovation hubs that provide infrastructure, biobanks or clinical trial networks, certain manufacturing facilities that are essential really for what I mentioned earlier, the translation of the scientific invention into the breakthroughs, into market-ready therapies that really reach ultimately patients out there. I think regions are also very well placed to pilot new care models in that competition to really maybe a little bit more agile as a region to do that adventurous step and to try out something new, integrate digital health tools or engage citizens directly in co-creating health solutions. So I think the proximity was mentioned earlier to patients and to providers does allow faster feedback loops and sometimes more innovative. I think you made that point quite forcefully at the beginning. So in short, regions are not just implementers of healthcare policy defined elsewhere. Very often they are the very drivers of that policy development and the engines really also of competitiveness. Making really a major contribution, and hopefully ensuring that we remain at the forefront of innovation in Europe. But that doesn't come for free, and that's the next plea I have. Let's also really take that responsibility really serious when the next file, the Biotech Act, comes to this house, into the co-decision process. These are opportunities, but we must use them wisely. But first of all, we really would appreciate any feedback, any input. I'm not a member of the Social Democrat Party, but my email and my telephone line is equally open. And but first of all, I think this is an even better occasion than later on the phone to use today the exchanges to learn from each other. Thank you very much.